Okay.
Okay, you should all now see the red dot that we are recording. Great.
So my name is Amy Goldstein. I'm the founder of Grace and Allen, a search and advisory firm that provides legal recruiting and career coaching services. I graduated from Tulane Law School and Rutgers College.
Oops, sorry about that. I am Randy Rosenblatt. I'm the founder of Upward Stride, a business development coaching, consulting, and training firm working with attorneys and law firms. I got my JD and MBA also from Tulane, and I got my undergraduate degree from the University of Michigan. So we are thrilled again that you're here today. The way we've structured this is we have 30 minutes of substantive content that we'll take you through. You can feel free to chat with one another in the chat feature, of course. If you have questions directed towards us, if you could just put a capital letter Q in front of it so that we can identify it as a question. We'll be sure to answer them. We'll try to address it as we go. If not, we have 30 minutes set at the end to open up the floor to live questions, questions in the chat, and really anything at that point. So we will certainly be sure to get to it. So to jump right in here, we're going to start with building, well, let me take you through the agenda. So building your profile is how we'll kick off here. We'll then move on to connecting with intention, then engaging in meaningful ways through LinkedIn, using the search functionality, developing good habits, and then, like I mentioned, 30 minutes of conversation. So we are using my LinkedIn profile just as an example to highlight what we're exactly talking about. So to start here, your photo and your headline. So your photo should be professional. It doesn't necessarily have to be a headshot, but if it can be, it's certainly ideal. Nothing with a friend cut out or on the beach or a partial arm or anything like that. So again, if you have a chance to take a headshot, I would do that. If you don't, just ask a family member to use an iPhone against a fairly simple wall, dressed professionally. Your headline should be something descriptive. So what problem do you solve? Not just your title, not just litigator, not just M&A lawyer, but truly if someone's looking for you, what problem would they have that you'd be solving? It's the first thing that people are going to see when they find you in a search. So make it interesting. If you're comfortable with it, add a personal touch, look around on LinkedIn, see what other people are doing, and feel free to make what they're doing your own. So modify it. If you see something on LinkedIn that applies to you, that's interesting, that you're drawn to, certainly take it and make it as your own. So the next section here is the about section. This is your pitch. Write it in first person, right? Instead of she is or Randy is, it's I am. It's a little bit more personal than your resume. So what do you do? Consider including things that are personal, really pulling the curtain back a little bit and giving people a glimpse into really who you are. Again, on the personal side, we're not asking you to hang dirty laundry or suggesting it in any sense, but do you have hobbies that people would align with? Are you a ballroom dancer, an underwater basket weaver? Are you a certified yoga instructor? Have you traveled to, 75 countries? Really anything. It provides people with an opportunity to connect with you in a way that's different, to align with you, to say something like, oh, she's a certified yoga instructor, so am I. Like, what another way that we can connect. The next section that we're going to talk about here is the featured section. This gives you an opportunity to pin things so that they appear on your page and they're kind of front and center. So they can be certain posts that you make, they can be articles that you want to highlight. It's ways that you want to get noticed above and beyond what you've already shared on LinkedIn. So here I have my business website, I have an article that I wrote. This is appearing right under the introductory section, so it's really front and center. So anything that you would want to appear there, be sure to pin. Your experience section. So this is oftentimes I find what people go to first when they're building a profile, and it's certainly important, but I think that there are just some tips and tricks to note as you're building this out. The first thing is to list everything in reverse chronological order. So what are you doing now, or what did you most recently do? So that people could really get a sense of what your practice is, or what your work is focused on currently. Be sure to load the icon if it's a company that has an icon that you can find through LinkedIn, which most do, so that it's on the left, it's aesthetically pleasing, and people identify oftentimes, especially with companies that they know. So people can quickly scroll down the left side and see where you've practiced, where you've been. Make sure your dates are accurate. So if it's your present role, make sure it's through the present time and everything else kind of lines up. If there are dates that overlap, that's absolutely fine. I surely have some based on different things I've done at the same time. Just make sure that everything is as it should be and as reflects your actual resume. And then as you load your experience here, say what the company does, but also say what you do, right? So people may know the company, and if the company you're at is Coca-Cola, if you're at Skadden, people know the names, but what's your role there? So take this opportunity to really say what you do for that, or what you did for that company. And then education, again, listed in reverse chronological order. Include the logos, and also include any awards you received, or any law journals you were a part of, really anything that you can add to the fact that you went to that university. So again, this is essentially a virtual resume in some ways. So make sure to take every opportunity to populate the different sections, because you are not there to answer questions, right? You are not there to tell people, oh, I got my MBA in finance from Tulane. Oh, do you want to know what scholarships I had? Do you want to know what awards I won? No one's going to ask you, right? So give them the chance to actually see it here.
So the next section is accomplishments. And a lot of times this gets overlooked. If you see on the page, there's a drop down that gives you some options that you can consider. Certainly publications should be listed. And Randy talked about the featured section a minute ago. If there are publications that you want to highlight, if you've done a lot of writing and there are a couple that really stand out, definitely, in addition to listing them under the publications, have them in the featured section, because the accomplishments are a little farther down the page. And so while it's a great opportunity to showcase certain things, people don't always get there. And so if there are things that you absolutely want people to notice, that featured section gives that opportunity to have it presented a little bit farther up. The next section is licenses, certifications, volunteer experience. Again, great opportunities to round out who you are. You don't always have to worry about whether it applies to what you're doing right now professionally, especially with the volunteer section. It tells a little bit more of the story about who you are. And so for purposes of painting that well-rounded picture, especially if it's something important to you, put it in there. Now, all of that having been said, this is not a disclosure document. So the things that we're both speaking about are things, again, to paint a full picture, but it is a marketing tool, and it needs to align with your resume. It doesn't have to be exact. You can have more things here than on your resume, or vice versa, again, as long as nothing contradicts each other, but you can pick and choose. So if you volunteer for a lot of different organizations, and some seem more relevant for your purposes on LinkedIn versus others, again, that is perfectly fine. You don't have to list absolutely everything.
Amy, one quick question here that we received is, what's your opinion on graduation years on LinkedIn? I think if you ask 10 people, you might get 9 or 10 different views on this, but
Yes. So I am of the philosophy that you put your graduation years on there, even when you're senior. Um, it is it is something that it usually is discoverable. So if somebody wants to know what your level of seniority is, it's there. If you leave your graduation years off and then you don't put your entire work history, it's a little bit misleading. If you do start with your first job after school, people figure out what your graduation year is, or they might make the opposite assumption that you actually had an earlier career and that you're even more senior than what is being shown. So it's a little bit of a catch 22. I had this conversation with somebody I was working with recently who um, was late 50s, maybe early 60s, and she was adamant that she wanted to take that chance, so to speak, that people just glance, which is absolutely true, and that they're not really thinking about the graduation year if you don't put it there, or some of the things I talked about with maybe you'll appear more senior. And that argument does make sense as well. If you feel strongly that you want to try and knock 10 years off where you're not omitting something, um, people have gotten in the door that way. Ultimately, people are going to figure out, give or take, what your level is. And so the other thing that I'll say about that is you want people to want to work with you for you. And so there's a limit to what you will get away with or really want to in terms of hiding your seniority, because it's just, if they want someone who's not of your vintage, ultimately that's going to be a deciding factor. That's just the reality. Randy, do you have anything to add?
nope, I think we're good.
Okay. So I hope that answered the question. We can always circle back. The next section, the next thing we're going to talk about is connections. So your goal, if you're not already at 500, is to have 500. Why that is the number that LinkedIn chose, where they stop showing the specific number. So 499 comes up as 499. Anything over 500 comes up as 500 plus. And what that is, it shows a basic level of engagement that you're participating as a member of the online community, which is something that people do take a look at right now. So get there, and if you don't think you know that many people, dig a little bit deeper. If you don't have a lot of connections now, if you have 150, if you have 200, don't start adding people randomly, but do keep that 500 number in the back of your mind as a goal. And the other thing is LinkedIn is a Rolodex. It helps you remember the people that you meet along the way. And so don't try and remember everybody. There are so many people that we meet in one-off situations where we don't know when an opportunity will come in the future where there can be a more meaningful connection. So take advantage of connecting with people on LinkedIn in those situations. Speakers, people that you meet at conferences, when you commute again, people that you sit next to on a train who happen to have a similar background, interests, there's some potential business for the future. Everyone that we meet is someone that potentially can be added to our connections. That having been said, you do want to be thoughtful about it, and you don't have to accept every invitation. You don't have to invite absolutely everybody that you meet. So you can be selective. You can set some rules for yourselves, but absolutely feel free to break those rules. For a long time, I had the philosophy that if someone was an attorney, I accepted them under every circumstance. And then I started getting international attorneys. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. However, they found me wonderful. But then I started getting attorneys in countries where their names were in English letters. They were Russian. They were in an Asian language. They were in a Middle Eastern language. I started drawing the line when I couldn't read the bios without hitting translate. So that's kind of an extreme example, but gives you an idea of a place where you can draw a line. Something to know, if you get an invitation and you decline it, the person does not get notice that you decline their invitation. Also, if you've accepted invitations that you then want to turn around and remove from your network, people don't get notices that you've disconnected from them. If there's someone that you want to have in your network, but they're clogging your feed, you can also mute people. So that is a distinction that you can make. You can mute people so that they're just not popping up, but you're still connected, or you can choose to disconnect from them. Another thing is, there are times you'll get an invitation where somebody makes it seem like they know you when they really don't. For example, I get invitations that say, I see we have many connections in common, and we actually have none. Uh, Clearly, that is through some program where it's just getting sent out. And not only do I not accept those invitations, but when you don't accept, you get a drop down from LinkedIn, a pop up that says, do you know this person? And I say, I don't know, so that LinkedIn is alerted to that this might be somebody who is spamming people. And so they don't get a notice about that, but it gives LinkedIn a heads up.
So we're going to move on to connecting with intention. So once you've built this profile on LinkedIn, the idea is to create a reputation that defines you and to really build an audience and carve out your space. So you really want to think about connecting with the people in your world. So colleagues, facilitators, classmates, relatives, co-counsel, opposing counsel, of course, the list goes on. Think backwards as well. People you went to college with, law school with, whatever the case is, and make those the connections that you start with. When you do reach out to connect, we both suggest connecting with a message. So there's an add a message feature. It's more than just kind of the click of, the basic connection. So if it's with a current colleague, you could just hit add. They know who you are, they know what you do, you probably talk to them every day, whatever the case is. But if it's someone that you sat on a panel with, if it was opposing counsel or co-counsel, if it's someone from way back when, add a message, set the stage for them. Don't make them do the work of figuring out how they know you and from when they know you. So just make it simple. There's a feature of connecting, and then there's also a feature of following. So if there's a thought leader that you're interested in hearing from, they're putting out a lot of good content, whatever the case is, you can follow them and not maintain a connection. So you're not necessarily seeing who all of their contacts are. You're not asking them to accept a connection. You're simply following, and they don't need to grant permission for a follow. So that's really helpful when there are folks whose content you just want to view, yet beyond that, you're not necessarily interested in the additional connections they may have, and or you just don't want to have to wait for them to grant you permission. Amy had mentioned before kind of creating a flexible rule for accepting and rejecting. The way I tend to handle this is, if somebody asks me to connect, I ask myself two questions. How can I be helpful for them? How can they be helpful for me? And if I can answer one of those, then I will usually accept them. Not always, but that's kind of the general rule. So there may be folks that request a connection who can't be helpful for me, but I know I can help. I'm oftentimes happy to accept them as connections. If there are, folks out of my industry who, live in locations that are far from here and we don't have any type of nexus that I can identify, I will reject those connections. again, giving myself the flexibility to accept them if I want. And it's really just to kind of create a parameter to work under. And then disconnecting quietly. Again, if you decide to clean house at some point, clear your feed, it's getting too noisy, it's not becoming useful for you as a platform and as a professional platform, people are not alerted to it, just have kind of an answer ready when someone reaches out, because they will undoubtedly do so to say, oh, I thought we were connected on LinkedIn. So the answer can be, oh, I'm surprised we're not either, we should be. And then you can repeat the process, a couple months down the line. Okay, engaging in meaningful ways. So LinkedIn is responsible for 80% of all B2B social media leads. That's a huge and powerful statistic, right? So any business to business done on social media, through social media leads, 80% of it is coming from this platform. Not all engagement, however, on LinkedIn is created equal. And there's an algorithm, there are nuances, some things to know about the algorithm. And again, LinkedIn goes really deep. So we're not expecting that you're going to sit behind your computers and kind of navigate this algorithm day in and day out, but it's something helpful to keep in mind. So from what we've learned, the cadence for appropriate posting would be about 2 to 3 times a week. Mondays are the worst day to post. Tuesday to Friday is equivalent to one another. The weekends get a different audience. So just be mindful and even think about what you're doing on the weekend. And if you are an audience on LinkedIn over the weekend, there's no best time of day to post. So I try to post when I'd be reading. So I just kind of use myself as a metric for that. Conversation threads on posts increase LinkedIn traffic, and it tells the powers that be that this is an interesting topic that people are talking about. And that makes LinkedIn want to kind of push that post up. If on a given post, you get 10 comments in 60 minutes, LinkedIn skyrockets your post. If you get 10 comments in 24 hours, they boost your post, not as high as they do based on the 60-minute metric, but they still boost it. This is why you see people having conversations within posts. They are playing with the algorithm, right? So if Amy posts something and I comment, what great information, thank you for sharing, Amy may reply, and she's replying because she wants to be nice probably, but equally because she's playing with the algorithm. So that's why you see conversations. They're trying to get to these magic numbers within 60 minutes, and if not, within 24 hours. Hashtags are hugely powerful if they have a large following. They make your content more discoverable because you are creating the opportunity to have farther reach. If you type into the search function different hashtags, you can see how many followers those hashtags have. So if you're a healthcare attorney and you want to type in healthcare attorney into the search function, you will see how many other people are following that hashtag. You want hashtags that have larger followings because that will, in effect, when you use that hashtag, create a larger following for your post. They can be used in posts, hashtags, and they can also be used in LinkedIn profiles. As a rule of thumb, no more than 3 to 5 hashtags per post on LinkedIn. This is not the same as Instagram. So if you are an Instagram user, the rules for this type of stuff are different on LinkedIn in terms of what is successful. And then I also like the idea of creating your own hashtag. So you can hashtag all of your posts, and then they are much easier to find by you and by anyone else who's following you.
And bear with us, we're going to run a little over 10:30 for our content. We did start a few minutes late, and we want to get all of this out there. So the next thing is links. So remember that LinkedIn wants to keep eyeballs on their site. So if you want to send someone to an article someplace else and you just post a link to the article, LinkedIn does not help you amplify that message. If anything, they mute it because they want to keep people on their page. So Randy was just talking about how LinkedIn likes to see comments as a level of engagement. They don't monitor from everything we understand what is in the comments. So you might see, we notice all the time, link in comments. We both use it because if you put the link in the comments, people can find the information, move to the other site, but without alerting LinkedIn basically that you're doing that. So the next thing is groups. So groups are a very powerful feature. They allow you to focus on specific practice areas and topics that are of interest. So you have a tailored audience for your message and also for information that may be relevant to help you acquire more knowledge about whatever area it is that is of interest. So one thing to know is if you are posting on your page on LinkedIn, the group doesn't see it. So if you want your network to see it, but you also want people in your group to see it or in a particular group that you're a member of, you do need to post in both places. So with groups, you're just like with your network, it's a whole other opportunity to engage a group of people on content. So commenting, liking, sharing posts, you'll start to build a whole world of people that may not be part of your network that you now can bring into your network, can engage with separately, generating content, endorsing others. All of this helps amplify your message. You can find people to follow who are thought leaders in whatever area it is of interest. And the more you participate in LinkedIn on both your network as well as in groups, people will take notice. And again, we mentioned before, it's free marketing. And so take advantage of that and get in front of as many people as possible. So just to go back to comments for a minute, comments are valued by LinkedIn more than likes. So if you do want to help amplify a message, the way to do it, it's nice to like something, but you're boosting it a little bit more when you comment on it. And comments also can be more helpful than sharing. If you just share something and you don't add anything to that, LinkedIn sees that it's not interesting to them. It's not new content. And so if you share something without comment, you're not boosting that content that you're looking to share, and you're also not raising your profile by getting your message out that you thought that was interesting for other people. So if you are going to share something, do it with some kind of comment. It can be a line or two. It doesn't have to be anything major, but get some kind of comment in the introduction and then share the post. And that will make LinkedIn think that it's new content.
So analytics of LinkedIn, and this is nothing major, but certainly worth kind of tracking on your own. And this is only things that you can see. And I put two posts here just as a way of an example. So you could obviously see I tagged Upward Stride, my company's hashtag. The left post is pure text, right? Just something about Clubhouse, which topic for a whole nother session. But I got 587 views of that post in my feed. And that's substantive, right? Like it's about the industry, it's about things going on, it's about a platform. The New Year's wish that I put out on the right side, which had an image, got 2,036 views of that post, right? So a little less than 4 times. So, and this happens time and time again, and Amy and I both kind of test this in our own feeds and in our own posts. Add an image. It attracts people. You get more sets of eyeballs. Eyeballs is not equivalent to engagement, but it's more likely to get engagement because they're one step closer. So even if you're posting on, I just actually did a post the other day about accountability. I very intentionally put an image. All it says is accountability. That's all the image says, and it's a stock photo. But I have, I think, close to 3,000 views now on that post. So again, you're building your audience. People are seeing your content. People are attracted to images. People are actually even more attracted to videos, but images are simpler. So just monitor the analytics of your own post and of your own feed. So content. Utilize LinkedIn to help create content and as a place for sharing content. You can publish articles on LinkedIn, or you can publish articles elsewhere and share them on LinkedIn. It's really helpful for building your brand. And if you don't want to go out there and find a place for publication, use LinkedIn, right? It's simple. It's not going to have necessarily as much of an impact as if you get published in Law 360 or any of the other publications that you might be interested in. But if it's something you want to write and get out there, put it on LinkedIn. It's a great place to do it. Come up with a schedule, a content calendar, an editorial calendar, whatever you want to call it, so that you have a plan. You know, you want to post, you want to share on Monday or Tuesdays and Thursdays, Wednesdays and Fridays, whatever the case is, put it on your calendar. It'll help you stick to it. If you have an opportunity to batch write your content, and we're not talking about white papers here. We're talking about 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs, a thought, really things that are geared towards what I'm going to call your avatar. Who's your audience? So what do they look like? Where are they? What are they reading? What do they do for fun? Where do they live, right? Create this kind of fictitious character in your head as you are writing your content. And it's not to say that hopefully it's not going to resonate with many more people than that, but write to that person. And if ideas come to mind throughout the week, jot them down and then set aside time to write that content. And then you could put it out there in line with the content schedule you've created.
So we don't want to neglect a little bit of the obvious. There's the search function right at the top of your LinkedIn page, and you can use that. We were talking about groups a minute ago. You can look up things that are of interest just to see if there are groups that are relevant to you, and then you can look to join. And they are groups as the one that is here, which is for healthcare, but there also are networking groups based on geography and interests and all different things. So you can play around with it and see if there are groups that you would like to join. And the other terrific thing for the search function is to search for people and specific people, but also people in types of roles where making the connections with people in the same industry or companies that you're interested in will help you build your network, find the right contacts and organizations for things that you're interested in. And then when it is time for introductions, you have that many more people that you can rely on to help warm up that first outreach.
So just to go through a couple of good habits for LinkedIn. First, as we mentioned, build your audience with intention. Be thoughtful as you build your audience. Block your calendar to engage daily, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It makes you do it, and it gives you consistency in your LinkedIn engagement. Create a realistic content calendar, like I had mentioned. Write and record videos with purpose. So again, knowing who your avatar is, what topics you want to be talking about, do all that writing and all that recording with purpose. And then play the game, right? LinkedIn, to a degree, it's a game. There's an algorithm. There's a reason things are where they are and posts are getting more attention than others. Understand how it all works and then effectively show up.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, and it is a lot to take in. You do not have to do everything that we suggested immediately. But the point is, the more you lean into it, the more you will get out of it, and the more you'll be able to use LinkedIn to leverage your career. So we are going to get to the questions in a minute. Absolutely feel free to reach out to either of us, both of us, with anything that we either don't get to or that you think of after the fact. Write our information down, but we also will be sending a copy of this recording to you in an email. Also, we will include information about our next webinar, which is going to be on February 26th, and it's called Placing Your Voice. identifying speaking and publication opportunities. So we are now going to shut off the screen share and we're going to jump in. We did have a few questions come in as we were trying to get through everything. So the first question is, if you're interviewing for jobs, would you connect with your interviewer? It's a great question. And it depends. It depends. So I would give thought to whether there is an opportunity to connect for a reason beyond just, hey, I'm meeting you next week and I want to connect. So we were talking about personalizing the message. It could be that there's, if it's someone who is going to be a potential colleague, you can be reaching out, talking about kind of a broader industry connection if you know people in common. Certainly reaching out to an HR contact just to have them as part of your network is something that people do all the time, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If you're meeting the GC and you're going to be, I don't know, just a mid-level within a GC's organization, that I would probably hold off on. It really is situational, and you need to think it through and see if it's something that seems okay. And if it doesn't, you probably want to get feedback on it, because it is a little bit tricky. It's not something to just kind of do all the time.
So I actually have a little bit of a different view on this. I actually do think that you should connect with a note, because if you get the job, great, then you're connected. And if you don't get the job, you want to already have the connection so that you could use it for networking opportunities going forward in a year, in 2 years, whatever the case is. He or she may not accept, and that is what it is. But I think by reaching out, you're showing you're doing your diligence and you want that connection far beyond this job opportunity. So again, ask 10 people, you'll probably get 10 views, but there's 2.
So I would say in that situation, you connect afterwards. So if you don't get a position, you can always still connect with people and say, hey, it was great to meet you. While it didn't work out, I would still love to be in touch for the future. So Randy's right. You'll get a different answer every single time. The next question is, in the past, oh, this is a comment. So if everybody didn't see it, in the past when I was interviewing, I would send my thank you to an interviewer as part of a LinkedIn invite to keep my information top of mind. That's a great way to make that connection and have a nice touch point after an interview. Next question is the open to, this is a great question. What is our view on the open to work banner? Does it help? I've heard recruiters are more interested in people who are working. So I do think it's helpful. If someone isn't working, they have usually their final work dates anyway, so you can see that in their profile. It does make it a little bit easier. I had somebody start this week who wasn't working for a year. He had taken a package when his company was acquired, and he had an outstanding background. And when I first connected with him, when I saw he was appropriate for what I was working on, it just made it easy. So if you're comfortable with it, it's eye-catching, and it's something that, again, just saves the recruiter from needing to look through your profile to see. There are so many circumstances for why people aren't working right now. Yes, there is something to they want people who are working, but at the same time, as I just said, there are a lot of stories out there. And so I don't think it's something that is viewed with such negativity that you should try and hide it.
So that's all the questions I see in the feed. I don't know, Amy, if you have others directed to you, but if not.
That is it. Any other questions?
Yeah, we have 16 minutes left in the hour. So if anyone has comments, ideas, things that have worked for you in terms of propelling your reputation forward, whether it's in the recruiting realm or just in advancing your practice or your business. We'd love to hear them.
And so we are, for the people who came in a little bit late, we will be sharing, everyone on the Zoom will be getting an email, which includes a recording for the presentation. And if there's any follow-up on any of the questions that we did answer, we're happy to dive a little deeper. And it can be in the chat if anybody wants to unmute themselves, if they have questions about anything that we covered or that we haven't yet. Here's one. Do you have insight on getting followers for your company page? This is somebody with a small firm. Any thoughts on that, Randy?
Yeah, I actually have a couple. So I would say, and it's interesting, I actually was recently doing some research into this and talking about this. So one idea is to take a link to your company page and share it on your other pages. So if you have a big LinkedIn following, copy and paste and invite people through, your Laura Brandt page to your law firm page. And do that on Facebook as well, because as much as everyone likes to think Facebook is personal and LinkedIn is professional, it all blends. Instagram, post it on there if you have a following. Twitter. So really kind of push it out that way. And then beyond just inviting people to follow it, I would say as you share things on that company page, continue sharing a link to your company page and what you posted there on your other pages, right? So to continue driving traffic that way. Does that help?
So it's not easy. So I have my own firm. I do all of my posting on my page. I have noticed recently I'm picking up followers on my company page, not on my personal page, but just it's not always easy. I haven't figured out how to present different material on my company page than my personal page to engage people further. So it does take a lot of thought, and you have to figure out strategically what the added benefit is to having people on one versus the other, or as Randy said, you blend them and make sure that you have followers in both places getting the same materials.
And I think also as you request connections and follow other people with it, they'll often, connect back, or if it's on a different platform, kind of follow back. Does that help, Laura? Great. Laura's actually a perfect example. I had shared this in a group that she runs, and she had suggested hashtagging or flagging her so that her network saw the post about this event, right? So running groups, and actually Laura, even posting your company page in your own group, right? Like you may have already done this, but really taking advantage of all the different avenues on LinkedIn. There's a handful of folks who are joining this call and who RSVP to join this through different places that Amy and I posted, alma maters, different legal groups and things like that. So again, they wouldn't have seen any of it just on our LinkedIn pages if we're not connected. So, and then actually drove connections also because they saw it elsewhere. That was a great question.
Feel free to chime in with other questions, but I also want to cover, since we do have a few minutes and we don't have anything coming up at the moment, one of the things that we didn't cover is the jobs page. And so since a couple of questions have come up in terms of people looking for positions, there are lots and lots of companies. LinkedIn happens to be a wonderful resource for job postings, but something came up yesterday that I want to mention. There are times, and it's just something to be aware of, that LinkedIn posts things as new when they are not. There's a company I'm working with, an offer was accepted on Monday, and yesterday it showed up saying that it had been posted within the first 6 hours. And so if you can dig a little deeper, I always encourage people, if they see a post for a company or a firm, to go to the firm or company website and see if the position is still posted there, because it is not always fresh, and that is a real frustration. But LinkedIn has its own cycle for things, and so the worst that happens is you submit for something that's already closed. But in terms of if you're putting time and energy into tweaking your resume, writing a cover letter, obviously you don't want to waste your time and do that for a position that isn't active. You might not always be able to figure that out, but I'm trying to flag that for people. Actually, it came up because somebody who was in a final round for an interview yesterday emailed me at night and said, should I be upset that the position was just reposted by the company? And I immediately got back to her and said, it wasn't. And so for all of you who are seeking jobs, that is just something to be aware of. It's a quirk in the system, but if you're always looking for new opportunities, some old ones might pop up anyway.
I mentioned that I had posted on accountability, and it's a little relevant here, actually. There's a handful of LinkedIn accountability groups around, and they are conversations within LinkedIn among people who've been connected in some way, and they share their posts so that each other can chime in on them. So it sounds contrived. It absolutely is contrived, in that they are trying to play the algorithm, right? And have conversations within posts and get traction on LinkedIn. And you'll start to see, now that I've mentioned it, you'll probably start identifying it if you're connected with any of these people, because it's the same people commenting on each other's posts. But it's smart. It's playing the algorithm. It's creating conversation. It's sharing with their networks. So if there are folks within your professional or personal world that would be interested in something like that, set up a group on LinkedIn with these people and share your posts, every day, whenever you're posting, so that you can start driving the traffic that way.
And if you post and if you respond to a comment, it still counts as a separate comment. So Randy had mentioned, I might post something, she might post, that's a great idea, and then I write thanks. That still counts as two comments, even though the content beyond the original post is pretty minimal. So that is something to keep in mind as well. If you get a handful of comments, rather than liking them, saying thanks does make a difference in that count.
Anyone have any questions? Anything they want to have a conversation on? Anything that we've said that they disagree with or wholeheartedly agree with?
Hello.
Yes. Hi.
Hi. I'm a kind of a newbie with LinkedIn, so please forgive me if this is a silly question.
No,
I was
sure.
listening to everything you said, and I'm trying to process. So for example, my husband has a new small business. Is it appropriate for me to send to or send to my LinkedIn followers or post on my page, hey, check out my husband's new business page, click on the link, whatever. And then if they click on the link, will that boost the circulation for his page, his business page, as opposed to his personal page?
So I think it's absolutely appropriate, and you can kind of craft language that makes it feel more appropriate. I think before you actually do that, you should kind of rewind to where we started. You said you were a LinkedIn newbie. Make sure you have an audience that sees what you're sharing. So if there's, and just by way of example, if you have 50 connections, that post is not going to go nearly as far than if you have 500 connections to actually see it. So I would save your post of that until you actually had an audience to view it. them clicking on the link is not going to, like the link to the business, that's not going to drive traffic. And again, just a reminder, make sure to put the link in the comments, not in the post. But clicking on the link's not going to do anything. It's more so the fact that your post will be shared with your network. And I would think about the hashtags you want to put in, think about tagging your husband in it. If he has co-founders, tagging them in the post as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
And then we're going to be sending out, as we said, this recording. We talked about the search function. Most of the things we talked about, probably not the algorithm stuff, but a lot of the things about how to create your profiles and the sections. And there are a lot of discussions on LinkedIn about LinkedIn. There are times I forget how to do things. And so I just look it up, and there ends up being entire conversations about it. LinkedIn puts out a lot of how-to materials. And then there are lots of people who do what we're doing and just try and help people figure it out and write articles and have discussions. And so there's plenty of opportunity within LinkedIn itself to get the information that you're looking for, if any of this, if you forget any of it or just want to dive a little deeper.
One other thing to mention, kind of in light of propelling your reputation forward and whatnot, is the types of relationships that you can actually make on LinkedIn. And I guess perhaps to a degree count it as a little bit of a silver lining of COVID and quarantine and whatnot. People are really engaging and interested in meeting one another. And I have made some fantastic professional connections that have turned into great relationships and opportunities for collaboration purely through LinkedIn, being part of groups, having conversations outside of those groups, following certain thought leaders and who are having certain excuse me, certain events on LinkedIn and attending that way and meeting other people. Actually, Amy, not to steal Amy's thunder on this, but Amy attended an event. Ari Kaplan is a phenomenal thought leader in legal in every sense. And Amy attended a virtual lunch that he did where he was highlighting, spotlighting someone in the industry. Amy ended up connecting with that individual after, and then both of us ended up collaborating with that organization just as a result of seeing something through Ari on LinkedIn, joining and following up after. So there's just huge opportunity on LinkedIn. You just have to lean in, show up, engage in ways that work for you and that are meaningful for you, and be patient with it. And kind of, like we said, play the game a little bit in terms of knowing.
I want to piggyback on that for a minute, because the other thing is not to overthink it. My favorite part of that story, and Randy, I don't even know if I ever told you that, I had not planned. So Ari does this virtual lunch every day at noon. He's been doing it since the pandemic started, and he does have guest speakers, but he also sometimes doesn't have a speaker, and there's just a dozen people or however many people on. Anybody can join, engaging in a conversation. And I had been busy with work, my schedule hadn't allowed it, whatever it was. I hadn't been on in a while, and I happened to see who the speaker was that day, and I was debating whether I could fit it into my schedule, and it was 10 to 12. And I said, you know what, it can't hurt. I don't have anything at noon, so why don't I jump on? Not really knowing what to expect other than at a very basic level. I was interested enough to hear more. And it ended up being such an engaging conversation. As Randy said, it led to us both building relationships, and we gave a presentation, and it looks like we're going to have opportunities to do more. And it's just, there are times that you jump in, and the worst that happens is you're a part of a group, or you sit in on a networking event that ends up not panning out, but you never know when it will. And a lot of times the things that you think are just so end up through some random connection leading to something more. So I encourage you to plug in broadly, as Randy likes to say, and see where it takes you.
So final
from you too.
Final thought here, a true LinkedIn expert that Amy and I both probably can't say enough wonderful things about is Samantha McKenna. I would encourage you to connect with her or follow her on LinkedIn. Check out her profile. I look at it as I build mine. This is totally her space, and she's lovely. So take some time. Again, her name's Samantha McKenna. Check her out, connect with her, follow her, and you'll get some really good, useful ideas there as well. So unless there's anything else, we will wrap this up. Again, we will send a follow-up email with the recording. If there's any questions, feel free to reach out to either or both of us at any time. We are going to continue this monthly. The next one is on February 26th. And we hope that you all have a wonderful weekend. So thank you for joining.
Take care. Thank you.